Archie Harris stared at the dried drops of blood on Sallie Lindstrom's cocktail dress, brown speckles against the blue. The clock chimed midnight, but the partygoers still laughed and chattered behind him. Archie realized that he'd been staring at Sallie, slack-jawed, while she rummaged through her purse, so he turned to the window instead. All that talk of Kansas, and now he found himself searching for some glimpse of the star-swept prairie sky. But the night sky above New York looked like the end of the universe, without a star left alive to wish upon. "What are you looking for, Sallie? Hang on, I know it's in here somewhere. I always keep it with me." Archie settled back against the Davenport and he grinned. He was drunk. Archie didn't like booze so much as a rule, but now the alcohol made sense. Sparks of giddiness glanced off the standing lamps and the majesty ferns in the corners. A dizzy note sounded in every voice. He thought that Sallie must be drunk too, though she didn't show it. She had a smile on her face as she dug through her bag, but she sat in a rigid attitude, spine straight. He could see now, clearer than ever, how she held herself clamped tight around her heart, always careful. She was still Sallie. She had that same old cheerfulness and vigor. But her posture, as she dug through her bag, reminded him of an easy chair with all the stuffing removed. "I carry this damn object with me everywhere. I couldn't even tell you why I have it, Archie, but I do. I always seem to insist on carrying it." She grinned at him. "Will you look at this?" She pulled out a folded keyhole handkerchief and handed it to him. He turned back the corners, and he found, folded in the cloth, the broken shell of a Valamilk candy cup. He hadn't seen a Valamilk in years. "Is this a 15-year-old piece of candy?" He held it up to get a closer look. "It isn't candy at all. It's from the prairie," Sallie said. An earthly light poured out of the ancient Valamilk, and the interior curled like a conch shell, impossibly deep. As he stared at it, the sound of the sea came to him, and he heard the murmur of voices from somewhere far away. Archie wondered if Ramsay had eaten the other half a lifetime ago. He threw back his head and he let out a hoot, half dumbfounded shock, half amusement. "I want to see it." "What?" "Sallie, I want to see that old prairie we made." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Yeah, it is. Since it's caused us all such a fuss, let's open a door." Sallie seemed to go somewhere far away. "No, I'm not in the business of opening doors." "Golly, Sal, you aren't usually one to turn down an adventure." Sallie dropped her eyes. "You don't know me. All I do is turn down adventures these days." "I have to see it." "Why?" "I don't know, I just have to." Why am I saying this? He wondered. After all those years not letting myself even remember. But he wanted to see the prairie now, here in New York. After all those years gone. It was real. It all happened. He had to see it. Archie looked at his hands. "I can open my own door, can't I? What was my door again? I just have to make 7 right turns down the street, isn't that correct?" "You shouldn't, Archie." "Don't you think we're a long way past shouldn't?" Sallie seemed to battle with herself for a moment. Then she got to her feet, and she stood very, very straight. "Fine. Since you're liable to kill yourself, we'll do this my way, and we'll be careful." Sallie thought for a second, then she marched off. "Evelyn, I need a mirror. No, wait, 2 mirrors." Archie settled back against the cushion and closed his eyes. He heard her voice, raised slightly above the drunken conversations. "Oh, Sallie wants to do a party trick," a man said. The darkness spun gently. Archie felt a calm rocking somewhere inside the air. Sallie would handle it. Sallie would handle everything. Folks were just drunk enough to listen as Sallie demanded mirrors. "No, I need a bigger one. Don't you have a standing mirror somewhere?" A woman's voice answered. "Why, there's a great big mirror on that door." He heard someone move next to him. "Archie, wake up, look." Archie opened his eyes. Sallie held in her hands a mirror, which she'd managed somehow to unscrew from off the bathroom cabinet. "Come on." He stood up carefully. Sallie led him towards a second mirror that hung off the parlor door. A few of the partygoers lingered there, waiting for a show. Sallie's friend, the watery-eyed poet, drifted up to watch. Sallie went up to the mirror on the door. She turned to the group. "All right, everybody, you're all drunk enough to see something really impossible." Laughter. Somebody slurred a few suggestions at her. A man half passed out on an easy chair cracked his eyes open to watch. "Step back, Archie, come on up here." Sallie lifted up the bathroom mirror and pointed it at the door. Archie squinted, but the reflection kept swinging away from him and replicating off into nowhere. "It takes a second to get the angle right." Sallie danced the mirror back and forth. A woman laughed. "My God, look at that," one of the girls said. Silence fell. The laughter stopped. Sallie had the angle almost perfect now, and 5 reflections down that infinite corridor, Archie saw the Mystic Prairie. The black stem prairie grass wobbled under the beating sun. "You wanted to see it, Archie? There it is." "How is that possible?" someone asked. The silence was complete now. Partygoers crowded close to the mirror, staring. A woman in a sequined stole leaned in to look. "That's some mirror trick." "And now look." Sallie tweaked the mirror's position just the slightest bit, and the room erupted into daylight. The Mystic Prairie filled the whole mirror. No matter what direction Sallie turned it, the reflection didn't change. Somebody dropped a glass. A woman shrieked. "Look at that, Archie! What the blazes?" somebody cried. A woman stepped out of a high-heeled shoe as she ran across the floor. All at once, the clamor filled Archie's brain, that howl that seemed to come from the core of the earth. The pressure in his skull overwhelmed him. He looked over at Sallie. "The door is making you sick," she said. The blood flowed out of her, the corner of her eye, her lip. Archie could barely hear her. He clutched at his head. "Close it, close it!" He couldn't hear his own voice. But Sallie wasn't listening. She held herself perfectly still in the middle of this chaos, caught out of time, and she stared into the mirror. She gazed at the door to the Mystic Prairie. Through that door, far, far out on the field of black grass, like a speck against the horizon, a figure stood there in the distance. Sallie squinted. "Who is that?" Blood began to soak into the neckline of Sallie's dress. The figure moved towards them. "Sallie, I'm feeling mighty bad, and I've seen what I wanted to see. Let's just close it." "Wait." She wore a strange assemblage of different clothing, shambling bits of armor, a padded rugby shirt it looked like, and a helmet. She ran towards them. She was close enough that Archie could just make out the rage in her eyes. "Sallie, close it." "Who is she?" The woman's eyes burned, and she dashed to them, closer and closer. And as she ran, she pulled out a sword. Archie lunged forward and knocked the mirror from Sallie's hand. The room was mostly empty now. A man behind them loosened his tie and started to rant about LSD, bad trips, something in the punch bowl. Sallie leapt to her feet. She looked so alive then, Archie thought. She looked more alive than she'd looked that whole night. "Who was that?" She turned to Archie, her eyes ablaze. "You saw her, right?" Yeah, I saw her." He felt like a child again. The roaring in his head retreated. It left him feeling diminished, a fool from Kansas in a too small suit, just like always. But Sallie looked completely and utterly herself. Partygoers crept back into the room. The running woman retrieved her lost shoe. "There's someone out on the Mystic Prairie," Sallie said. "But who?" said Archie. "There's only one other person who might know, and that's Ramsey." You're listening to Mystic Prairie, a Fantasia of the Old West. Episode 7, All the Way to Babylon. 14 years have passed since the disaster at the barn. Sallie Lindstrom has tried to move on with her life, but she's haunted by her illness and by the Mystic Prairie itself, which appears to her in mirrors and in dreams. But now she's discovered that someone is inside the prairie, and she needs to find out why. A week after the party, Sallie Lindstrom sat at work, sick as all hell. Blood oozed stubbornly from underneath the fingernails on her left hand. She dabbed at them with a napkin over and over, but even so, blood smears blotted out half the buttons on her typewriter. More serious wounds hid beneath her clothes. A tender spot under her rib cage kept leaking blood. It wouldn't firm up, no matter how often she changed the bandage. Sallie filled her purse full of cotton balls, and she kept ducking into the restroom to try and stop the bleeding. She felt so tired. 3 months without an incident, and now this. Sallie hadn't had an episode like this in years, not since she left home. But still, it had been worth it, she thought with glee. Archie's face, that party, the shrieks and everyone losing their minds. What a scene that was. She couldn't stop thinking about the party and the figure she saw through the door. Who was that woman out on the prairie? The editor-in-chief, Cassandra, left her glass booth of an office, and she strode over to Sallie's desk. "I'm removing your article, Fast Family Lunches on the Go, from the proposal board. We'll publish it on Monday. It'll be perfect now that the school year has started." Sallie cleared her throat. "Oh, that's great news. Thanks, I'll give it another look over." "Wonderful." Cassandra walked away. Sallie wrote for the 4Fs page of the New York Times. Family, food, fashions, furnishings, the header announced. The women on the 9th floor penned articles about kitchen appliances, fabric, infant psychology, and soap. Sallie found the work soothing and dull. It took her far away from any sort of passion or agitation. She chose the job on purpose to avoid any sensation of life at all. The phone on her desk rang. Sallie picked up. A hesitant, almost childlike voice trembled on the other end of the line.
"Sallie? Is this Sallie? Oh, I sure hope that woman put me through to the right place."
"Mama?"
"Yes, it's your mother."
Sallie sat in stunned silence for a moment. "Mama? Where'd you even get the number for my office?"
"I'm your mother, Sallie."
Mama replied, as if that really did explain everything. Sallie didn't know what to say. "Why call me at work? You could just call me at home." Mama sighed.
"I heard from Mrs. Harris that you've been dialing collect on the telephone, all the way from New York City."
This was true. Sallie had spent the whole last week trying to track down Ramsey. and that meant calling people back at home long distance, collect because she didn't want to pay to talk to a single one of them. But nobody in Laurel seemed to know anything about where Ramsey might live now. It hadn't even occurred to her to call Mama with questions. Mama never knew anything about the folks in Laurel. She was always the last to hear gossip. Yes, I've been making calls.
And searching for that little Sykes boy, I know. Everybody in town is jumping out of their shoes when the operator comes on the line asking them for money.
Well, they owe me. They gave me plenty of hell back when I was a kid. They acted like I cavorted with Satan on a daily basis.
Why didn't you call me, Sallie? You know how much I miss you. You wanted to talk to the whole town, but not to your own mother.
Sallie could hear Mama's well-worn pain all the way in New York. Her mother's agony wavered through the telephone wires, and then it settled into Sallie's mind like it belonged. As always, Sallie wanted to snarl at her mother and run away, hang up the phone, get out. Instead, she gripped the receiver tight. I'm sorry, I'll call you next time. And you know I'm coming for Christmas, I promised. Do you remember? The fight seemed to leave Mama all at once.
Yes, Sallie, I remember. Well, I did call you for a reason. You know, your little friend Ramsey, his mother took the family to Chicago after the father, Derek, died.
Sallie gripped the phone for dear life.
But I called because, well, have you heard of a part of the city called Babylon?
Babylon is on Long Island, Mama.
Of course they'd name a place Babylon in New York City.
What's in Babylon?
Ramsey, your little friend lives there now. You know, if you phoned me, I could have told you right away.
He's here?
Yes, Sallie.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Mama.
Well, you're welcome, Sallie.
Mama sounded uncertain.
I suppose I'll see you at Christmas time, if you really are coming.
Yes, I'm coming. Thank you for calling me. Sallie hung up the phone, only to find her office neighbors staring at her from across their desks. Mary Helen in her cat-eye glasses, and Nancy with her beehive hair. They both looked stricken at the sight of her. Dear Lord, Sallie, Mary Helen said, your eye. Only then did Sallie feel the telltale trickle down her face. The excitement of the phone call had set the blood running once more. Sallie felt a drop fall from her chin. Nancy looked horrified, ready to scream. Sallie tried to soothe her. Shh, don't shout, don't scream, or you'll scare everybody. It's really all right, I'm fine. You're covered with blood. I'm calling the secretary. We need an ambulance. Nancy looked so comically panicked that Sallie cackled despite herself. She fought the urge to dissolve into giggles. She looked around. None of the other girls on the floor had noticed the commotion. Nancy lifted up the phone from off its cradle. Hey, wait, Nancy, don't call anybody. But Nancy was already dialing. You put that phone down now, you hear? Sallie leaned over, suddenly angry, and she pushed on the button. The call went dead. A single drop of blood streaked off her finger and down the side of the phone cradle. Nancy stared at it, transfixed. Don't. Listen, Nancy, I have a condition. I've had it since I was a little kid. It's like hemophilia. I don't often get these episodes, but I promise you I'll be all right. You girls have to trust me. Please don't call the hospital. I've got it bad enough without their help. Nancy still looked skittish, but Mary Helen, the quieter of the two, nodded slowly. All right, Sallie, we'll listen. Would you please tell Cassandra I got sick and had to leave? I'll be back Monday. If she asks, I got a bad stomach. Nancy was practically shaking in her seat. I really am fine, Nancy, I promise. Now just give me 1 minute and I'll be gone. Sallie reached under her desk for her emergency bag. It contained a change of clothes, shirt, slacks, a Mars bar, and a compact. She took out the mirror, wiped her face, and applied the makeup. Then she ate the Mars bar. See you girls Monday, she said. Sallie walked to the elevator as fast as she dared. Sallie had lived in New York for her whole adult life. But even after all that time, the skyscrapers of the city still recalled to her the emptiness of the Kansas fields. Those buildings towered above her, so vast as to be nearly dimensionless. Their colossal foundations, their angles and facades implied the shape of infinity itself somehow, just as the horizon line that bounded the prairie caused the sky to fill with an endless, unknowable depth. But of course, New York was nothing like Kansas. After her first few months of urban life, Sallie realized that the city wanted nothing more than to box up the infinite and set it aside. The partitions and rooms of the town extended through tunnels deep beneath the earth and up into the air. The city soared and burrowed, but only so that it might hide from itself forever. Sallie found that she could conceal different bits of her own being across the metropolis. In New York, she led many lives. On the 9th floor of the Times building, journalist Sallie wrote articles about cooking. Her editors valued her for her focus, and everyone assumed vaguely that she wanted to find herself a husband and settle down. On weekends, she went to house parties in Manhattan, where she transformed from lady journalist into Sal, who ran with the writing set, even though she didn't write much herself. On Fridays, she went to bars in Greenwich Village very late, and then she introduced herself as Sallie, just Sallie, and she met women to take home. It terrified her, but she did it anyway. She had to. She kept parts of herself in Midtown Manhattan and in Greenwich Village and in Chelsea, everything partitioned into its place. But those bits of life never connected to one another, or even to themselves. She wondered if she ever unified them, who she would meet. A stranger, maybe. She did feel like a stranger to herself. Or perhaps one day she'd open a door, step into a Manhattan house party, and she'd finally find herself, her real self, the little girl she'd been before the barn. That's why Sallie liked to go on walks through New York. A stroll across town joined all the parts, and she saw then how the whole city fit together into one place. It's all one prairie in the end, she thought, however much they try to hide that fact from themselves. So when she left the Times building that afternoon, Sallie walked. Not to her apartment. She walked through the busy streets towards Penn Station to find a train that would take her to Ramsey. What am I doing? She wondered as she crossed the gleaming station floor. She had no plan and no real idea of what to do or how to find him, but some impulse piloted her body towards the ticket counter. Without pausing to wait or think, she scurried up to the teller and she bought herself a ticket on the 2:30 train. Sallie felt weak and a little shaky. She waited on a bench, her mind full of static, until the train pulled in. Then she clambered on board and took a seat by one of the large curtained windows. The conductor moved through the car and shouted, "This train is going all the way to Babylon. All the way to Babylon, folks. Tickets, please." A man slid into the seat opposite her. He wore polished shoes and a pressed suit, with its lines so crisp and clean that he looked like a paper doll. A puppy made of felt peeked its cloth nose over the top of his shopping bag, a toy for his child at home, presumably. Sallie felt like she knew everything about this man just after looking at him once. He had a house upstate, he had a wife and a daughter. When she glanced out the window, she felt the man's eyes slide over her. He examined her, and she wondered what he saw. Maybe the blood splash on her sleeve or the shadows under her eyes. "I know you," she thought. Do you know me? Who am I? She wanted to ask him. The train lurched forward, then picked up speed, and soon they glided under and over the New York skyline like a ship on an ocean of architecture. Sallie tried to relax, but she could never really relax these days. She tongued at a loose tooth. Her gums felt tender still. Blood spritzed into her mouth from behind the molar. She grimaced. What am I doing? She wondered again. She didn't know. All at once, she began to panic. The strict adult side of herself started scrambling for control. She needed to go back to work and stop herself from bleeding every 5 seconds. She needed to keep it together. She should just get off at the next stop and take a train back to Penn Station. But the party had awakened some ancient Sallie of long ago, and now she felt the world slipping around her as she rattled out of New York, spent, exhausted, and with blood drying in the porches of her ears. She ran on fumes and thinning excitement, with no plan at all. And why? In search of someone she remembered like a character in an old story. Ramsey. I gotta get my mind off of whatever the hell it is I'm doing. I don't know. She took out a notebook and flipped through the empty pages. Every so often, she came across a line or two, scattered randomly. Sallie always wrote about the barn. Disjointed musings. Sallie stared at the pages. She didn't want to write about the barn, really. What she wanted, what she always wanted, was a sensation of the Mystic Prairie back again. Not the agony of it, but the game they played. The sheer joy when she said her incantations and called up their dreams so everyone could feel it all together. She wanted to imagine again. She wanted to write, and yet the fear of blood always stopped her. Careful, careful, careful. Count the days between each episode. Eat 3 meals, stay healthy, get lots of sleep. And the job is paramount. You lose that, you lose everything, and then it's home to Mama. She put the notebook away. Slowly, the city yielded to suburb and beach. The conductor called out the stations. They started and stopped and started. The paper doll man got off the train. Babylon Station, last stop. Sallie slithered through the car as the train slowed. She disembarked. Then she stood on the elevated platform and looked around. Babylon, New York stood on the outskirts of the city, though in Sallie's mind, New York didn't really have outskirts. It blended itself with New Jersey, or it petered into the cold up north. Still, Babylon felt like the edge of something. What she didn't know. It was a kind of ancient suburb. The houses looked huge to her, but they weren't mansions, just big old homes. Sallie had absolutely no idea how to find Ramsey. Her heart hammered in her chest. A drop of blood splattered onto the concrete in front of her, from her ear this time. She dabbed at it restlessly. This was a crummy idea. She needed some kind of plan, but nothing came to mind. There was a phone booth at the bottom of the platform's stairs. She walked down to it, opened the glass door, and checked the shelf underneath the phone for the white pages. She flipped open the book and looked up Ramsey's name, but she couldn't find any psychs listed. I just need something, she thought. What else might lead me to him? She tried to think of Ramsey, tried to remember. His smug face, his confidence, his cat. She imagined him opening a Valamilk wrapper and sliding a piece of candy out into his hand, smiling at her. Valamilk. Sallie put the white pages away and took out the yellow pages. She flipped to the C's, and then she scanned the page for candy shops. She found a handful of listings. Sallie reached into her purse and snapped open her wallet. She had a couple of dollar bills and 2 coins, 2 shots. She took a deep breath. Then she plucked 1 coin out of her purse, shoved it in the slot, and dialed a number. The phone rang twice and a woman answered.
Hello, this is Rosie's confectionery.
Hi, I wanted to inquire, do you happen to carry Valamilk candy cups?
Valamilk? That's a candy from out west. We don't stock them, I'm afraid. It's quite the expense to have those shipped out here.
I see, thank you. She hung up. Then she took out the second coin, the last coin. She tried another shop, a place called Ocean Fancies, but nobody picked up. The payphone deposited the coin back in the change slot, so she had one more chance. Come on, she whispered. She slid the coin into the slot, and she dialed a store called Carl's Candy. A clipped voice came on the line.
This is Carl,
the voice said. Hi, I was wondering if you carry Valamilk candy cups by any chance?
Yeah, I got 'em.
Sally's heart leapt in her chest. Oh, that's great. I've been looking all over for... Carl hung up. Carl's Candy has Valamilk, she thought. I have to go there. He must know something about Ramsey. She looked at the listing again, and she took out her pocket map of New York and the greater surrounding area. She found the address. The shop was right out on the beach, practically, and very close by. Stay calm. No passing out, not here. They'll take you for a vagrant. She left the train station, and then she headed towards the candy store, slow and steady, 1 step at a time. The houses passed by. She noticed that piles of sand dotted every yard. And then, after what felt like years, she saw the water, and she saw the shops. A barber with its red spiral sign, a hairdresser, and a candy store. Carl's Candy, saltwater taffy, gifts, comics, cards. She walked inside the shop. A riot of circus colors greeted her. Bright signs in balloon lettering promised caramel corn and fudge. A large painting of a clown adorned the cement block wall. His gloved fist curled around a stick of cotton candy. A middle-aged man with olive skin stood behind the counter. Sallie hoped this was Carl. Pardon me, I think I just spoke to you on the phone about any Valamilk candy cups you might have in stock. Oh yeah, we got 'em. The man nodded at one of the shelves. Then he gave her a sharp look. He seemed almost curious about her, Sallie thought. Any reason you're looking for these? Not too many people on Long Island looking for Valamilk. I'm probably the only shop on the East Coast that carries them. She had his attention now, and she saw her chance. Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. See, I'm trying to track down an old friend of mine. We were playmates as kids, but we lost touch. And now, well, I know he lives in Babylon, but other than that, I don't have any way to find him. But he used to love Valamilk candy cups. So I was wondering if you'd seen him, maybe. Carl looked flabbergasted. Well, I'll be damned. You know, I have these delivered to a customer of mine. He orders them special. That's why I keep them stocked, and he really might be the fellow you're looking for. He's about your age and everything. Mr. Sykes, is that your guy? That's him, all right. Sallie wanted to dance around the shop like a lunatic. Golly, I should have known he'd find a way to get Valamilks. He was crazy about those things as a kid. Would you mind sharing his address? He was like a brother to me. Boy, you just about made my day. Sallie's excitement was infectious. The shopkeeper grinned. Sure, kiddo, he lives on Castle Street, about 6 blocks down. Carl wrote out the address and handed it to her. And isn't he a lucky one, having a cute little girl track him all this way? Here. Well, thanks. She bought a bucket of caramel corn, the biggest she could carry, and then she staggered back out onto the street. It didn't take her very long to find Ramsey's house. It was just a few more blocks away. In fact, she recognized it even before she checked the number. The house looked just like him. There it stood, a gloomy old arts and crafts bungalow. It hunched there at the end of the street, sunk into itself, dignified and yet forlorn. She could sense all the empty rooms that Ramsey hadn't yet filled with furniture. She knew exactly what to expect. Unless it wasn't his house at all, of course. She climbed the steps and knocked, and waited. For 3 panicked minutes, Sallie wondered what she would do if some stranger opened the door. Or maybe his wife. God, what if he had a wife? The sun drew golden lines of light across the grass. It was already late afternoon, nearly evening. She'd be stuck here sleeping on a bench if she wasn't careful. Did she even have enough money to get home? Well, I'm in a jam, aren't I? And again she wondered, what am I doing here? Her delight from the candy shop evaporated, and now she just felt like an idiot holding a bucket of popcorn. She heard movement somewhere in the house. The knob turned. The door opened. A tall, sallow-looking young man stood before her. It was Ramsey. Sallie boggled at him. "Can I help you?" He looked so different, Sallie thought. He had a sickly elegance to him that surprised her. He was thinner now and wispier, with a frown just beginning to carve permanent lines into his cheeks and forehead. "Ramsey, it's me." "I'm afraid there's been some kind of mistake." "Aw, quit pulling my leg, Ramsey. It's me. You know who I am." He recognized her then. She could tell, but he didn't say anything. He looked distantly surprised and guarded. "I got you a present. Here, you want this giant bucket of caramel corn? It's a gift. Come on, you love candy." But Ramsey didn't move to take it, so Sallie just put the bucket down on the porch by the door. "What do you want, Sallie?" Ramsey tipped his chin up and regarded her with a kind of haughty distance. Sallie couldn't think why he was being so unfriendly. They'd said a sad farewell all those years ago, but not an angry one. "What do I want? To see you, of course. I've missed you ever since the night you left." A pained expression flickered across Ramsey's face and disappeared. "But what are you doing here now?" "I live here, I live here in New York. I heard you were nearby." "Well, it's nice to see you, but I don't have time for a visit today." His voice quivered. She heard that petulant note she knew so well. It sounded funny in Ramsey's adult baritone. "I've got work to do." "Ramsey, for God's sakes." But Ramsey was backing into the house. Sallie slammed her hand against the door before he could close it. "Wait!" And again, she felt the blood. It oozed from her forehead now, at the hairline, trickled into her eyebrow, down her face. Ramsey saw it. He stopped and stared. And God, she felt tired. Like she was 1,000,000 years old. The last girl on planet Earth, and the only person left besides her wanted to shut her out and run away. The edge of her vision blurred slightly. "Just wait, listen, please, 'cause something's happened. We need to talk about the Mystic Prairie. We need to talk now." Ramsey stood stonily, his eyes fixed on the blood. At last he nodded. A wave of dizziness overwhelmed Sallie then, but she steadied herself on the door. She'd been pushing herself too hard, for too long. "I need some water, Ramsey. I'm doing pretty bad. Will you let me inside?" "All right." He stepped back into the house. Sallie moved to follow him, but her legs bent beneath her, and she stumbled. All at once, Ramsey was there. He caught her and held her up. He felt so warm through his shirt, and so real. "Ramsey, help me, don't leave," she thought. She almost burst out crying right there on the doorstep. "Okay, come on. God, you're heavy, Sallie. You got fat. I weigh 110 pounds, you idiot. You just got weak arms." They staggered inside together. The house echoed just like she expected. She didn't see any furniture, nothing in sight except a writing desk in the living room, which Ramsey had pushed up against the bay window. Wow, nice place you got here. So cozy. Just sit. And stop giving me that lip. He helped her to the desk. What do you do for work, Ramsey? Aren't you drawing? I can't draw anymore. Ramsey walked away into the kitchen without explaining further. She heard a tap squeak and the sound of a running faucet. He returned with a glass of water in his hand and passed it to her. All right, so what is it? What do you want to tell me? Sallie could tell he was still peeved. She swallowed a few gulps of water. There's someone in there, Sallie said. Where?
Ramsey, there's somebody inside the Mystic Prairie.
I don't know who they are, but I saw them. Ramsey stared at her. What? So last week I opened a door, for the first time in ages. Gosh, the first time since we put Hockey Pot through. But then, through the door, I saw this woman. She looked wild. She ran towards me and I dropped the mirror. Sallie took a careful sip of water. Do you think we left a door open somehow all those years ago? Maybe somebody got trapped. Or do you think there were always people on the Mystic Prairie? Did we imagine people there somehow? Ramsey leaned against the wall. She detected a faint glimmer of excitement in his eyes. I'm glad you came, actually. He gave her a piercing look. Sallie, I have something to tell you. What? I've gone through the door. I've visited the prairie myself.
You've been there?
Not often, since it makes me sick to my stomach, but I've never been able to leave it alone. Sallie leaned back in her chair. I tried to leave it alone. I've been strict with myself. My condition can get out of control if I'm not careful. But it's like it still got me somehow. Is that why you're bleeding? Because you opened a door? Ramsey sounded much warmer all of a sudden, like he understood. And of course he did understand. Better than anybody. Yeah, but it was a mistake. If I get too sick... She stared down at her glass. Ramsey, I can't lose my job. I can't go back home to live with Mama. I just can't. That's the most important thing to me. And that means I have to be careful. And then Ramsey laughed. It was a warm laugh. He sounded so familiar, so himself somehow. You've got to be careful? I can't believe I'm hearing this. Ramsey smiled, that old superior smile. But when he spoke, his words had more strength behind them. Listen, Sallie, you're here because you want to go to the Mystic Prairie. With me. Now. Sallie stiffened. What? I can't. Ramsey, I'm so sick I'm about to pass out on your floor. Ramsey's smile became an all-out smirk. Did you really come all this way just to tell me that you saw someone out in the prairie? Just so I know? Is that really why you're here, Sallie? Sallie gaped. She didn't have an answer for him. You want to go and see the prairie for yourself. That's what you want. You want to be convinced. And you know, I can convince you. I've learned some things. But I'm sick. I've never been inside the prairie. We're always sick. And the prairie is always waiting. And anyway, Ramsey leaned forward. His brown eyes pierced her through. If you want something special, you have to give something special. Sallie stared at him. Yeah, you're right. He reached out a hand to help her up. She took it, and then for a moment, he paused and held her hand tightly. He had a firm grip. His hand felt cool in her own. Shall we? Yeah. He pulled her to her feet. The trick is you have to move fast. If we travel through the doors quickly, we won't get nearly as sick. We just have to go. I usually set up my door in the basement where it's dark. Come on. The water and the rest had revived Sallie somewhat. She found she could walk without Ramsey's help. She followed him through the barren house into the kitchen. He stopped at the basement door. "It's down here." He opened the door to reveal a stairway that vanished into the dark. Cold air swelled up from the cellar and hit her in the jaw. "You go first, Sallie. I'll follow you." "All right." Sallie took a few steps down the stairs. She heard Ramsey shuffle a bit behind her. "Let's begin." Ramsey shut the door. Sallie found herself plunged into perfect darkness. "Hey!" She heard him murmur in the dark. "Keep going. I'm right behind you." All at once, Sallie felt a nasty, sinking sensation in her belly. She couldn't explain it, but she wondered if she'd made a mistake somehow with Ramsey. But what mistake? He was Ramsey, wasn't he? A strange, spoiled smell drifted to her, maybe from the kitchen, under the door. She got just a whiff of it, and then it disappeared. "Just keep walking, Sallie." He sounded annoyed now and very familiar. Her unease vanished. "Of course you know him," she told herself. "That's Ramsey. Ramsey, your best friend." She felt her way down the stairs, through the dark. She heard a rustling sound somewhere from all around her. "Keep going. I'll follow. I'm right here." Something tickled her arm, and then another something. Spiderwebs? No. She reached her fingers out into the darkness, and she felt grass, blades of grass bent against her palms. "Ramsey, it's Blackstem." "Take one more step." Light filtered through the air like winter dawn. A surge of blood pulsed in her mouth. She felt an ache somewhere in her side, and then white noon light flooded her eyes and blinded her. She squinted against it. Sallie's first glimpse of the Mystic Prairie wasn't of the prairie at all. It was of Ramsey's face. He glowed in the light of the impossible sun. He looked different, satisfied, relaxed, as though he belonged here, and he welcomed her now to his home. Over his left shoulder, she saw a burning glass barn, fierce in the sunlight. "We made it, Sallie. Together. Like you always said." They turned to the prairie at last. Mystic Prairie is a third Cosmonaut production, written and produced by Katherine Jameson and McKinley Baker. Performed by Katherine Jameson and with music by the same. Editing by McKinley Baker. If you like what you've heard and you want to support us, please help us get the word out and recommend this podcast to your friends. Thanks for listening.